It was Easter Day, and the city was quiet. Most people were enjoying the holiday with their families, but not Mark. He was alone in his apartment on the 30th floor of a tall apartment building. With nothing to do, he decided to look out the window and enjoy the view. As he gazed out, he noticed a building across the street that he had never paid much attention to before. However, something caught his eye this time. He saw a guy in a giant rabbit costume in one of the rooms. The man was swinging a knife through the air, as if trying to slash an invisible enemy in front of him. Mark rubbed his eyes, thinking he was seeing things. But when he looked again, the man in the rabbit costume was still there, holding a knife and slashing the air. Mark shuddered at the thought of what the man was doing, even if he wasn't hurting anyone. As Mark watched, the man in the rabbit costume began to move around the room, still slashing the air with the knife. Mark couldn't see his face, but he could sense that something was off about him. Suddenly, the man stopped moving and looked directly at Mark's apartment. Mark froze, feeling like he had been caught spying. But the man in the rabbit costume didn't seem to notice him. He just stood there, staring for a few moments, before turning around and disappearing from sight. Mark was left feeling shaken and disturbed. He tried to shake off the creepy feeling, but he couldn't help but wonder what the man was up to in that room. He decided to keep an eye on the building across the street, just in case he saw anything else unusual. 30 minutes passed without any sign of the guy in the rabbit costume. Suddenly, there was a knock on Mark's door, which scared him. When he opened the door, no one was there except a note. Mark picked up the paper and read the message, and it sent chills down his spine. The note said, "Do not spy on me. Happy Easter." Below the message was a drawing of a knife slashing an Easter egg in half.
It was a beautiful spring evening, and the group of friends had decided to throw an Easter costume party. Everyone was excited to dress up and have a good time together. A few days before the party, Tim had mentioned that he was going to show up in a bunny costume. The group had laughed at the idea, but they knew that Tim loved to make everyone laugh, so they were looking forward to seeing what he would come up with. Finally, the day of the party arrived, and the group gathered at the designated location. One by one, the guests started arriving in their colorful and creative costumes. Suddenly, the door opened, and there was Tim in his bunny costume, just as he had promised. However, the costume covered his whole head, so they couldn't see his face. The group of friends welcomed him with open arms, and they started dancing and jumping around together. Tim didn't speak the whole time, but he was hugging and playing with everybody, just like he always did. He seemed to be having a great time, and the group was happy to have him there. The next day, Tim called one of his friends and apologized for not showing up at the party. He said that he had gotten sick and had to stay home. The friend was confused because he had seen Tim in the bunny costume at the party. He called the other friends to tell them what had happened, and they were all shocked. If Tim hadn't been in the bunny costume, then who was it?
On Easter Sunday, the city was quiet except for the ringing of church bells. Sarah was on her way home from the grocery store when she noticed something unusual on the steps leading up to her apartment building. Each step had an Easter egg placed on it. She shrugged it off and began climbing the steps when she accidentally stepped on one of the eggs and heard it crunch under her feet. Feeling uneasy, Sarah quickly cleaned it up and went inside, locking the door behind her. Later that evening, an old man knocked on her door, holding a basket of colorful Easter eggs. He asked if she knew anything about a missing egg from the steps. Sarah felt uneasy around the old man and denied knowing anything. That night, Sarah heard someone stepping on the eggs outside her door. She was too scared to open the door and investigate, and the sounds continued throughout the night. The next day, Sarah went to church for guidance, and when she returned home, the eggs were gone, but something worse was on the steps. Sarah slipped on something wet and fell down a few steps. Looking down, she saw a dead sheep cling on the steps. Horrified, she called the police, but they couldn't find the old man who had placed the eggs. Sarah never felt safe again in her apartment building, always feeling like someone was watching her and waiting to harm her.
It was the day before Easter, and the children of the small town were excitedly preparing for the annual Easter egg hunt. The adults had hidden colorful eggs all over the park, and the children eagerly searched for them. As the hunt went on, the children noticed something strange. The eggs they had found were shaking, almost as if something was moving inside. They excitedly cracked them open, expecting to find candy or small toys, but the eggs were empty. Suddenly, one of the children vanished without a trace. The others searched frantically for their friend, but they couldn't find any clues as to where he had gone. One by one, more children began to disappear, leaving the remaining kids in a state of terror. The adults searched the park and the surrounding area, but they found no trace of the missing children. As the sun began to set, the remaining children huddled together, afraid to move or speak. They could hear strange noises coming from the woods, like something was moving through the trees. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the shaking of the eggs stopped. The children hesitantly approached the remaining eggs, but they found nothing inside. The search for the missing children continued for weeks, but no one ever found them. The townspeople whispered that they had been taken by some kind of Easter monster, a creature that only appeared on the day of the egg hunt to steal away children. The annual Easter egg hunt was cancelled that year, and every year after that. The townspeople could never forget the terror that had descended upon their community, and they feared that the Easter monster might return if they ever tried to hold the event again.
It was Easter Sunday, and the residents of the city were out in full force to celebrate. One particular party, held in the courtyard of an apartment building, was especially lively. There were games, music, and food, and the kids were excited to find the colorful Easter eggs that were scattered around the courtyard. But as they gathered the eggs and opened them up, they realized that something was off. The eggs were oozing out a gross, green liquid that made everyone feel gross. They quickly realized that the eggs had gone bad and had been left out in the sun for too long. Panic set in as people started to worry that they may have been poisoned. However, after a while, it became clear that no one was actually getting sick from the eggs. Instead, they just felt gross, as if they had eaten something that had gone bad. Suddenly, someone noticed a figure lurking in the shadows. It was a man, dressed in black, and he seemed to be watching the partygoers with a sinister look on his face. The man was quickly identified as a disgruntled former employee of the apartment building who had been fired for stealing. He had snuck into the party with a plan to ruin the Easter celebrations by sabotaging the eggs. With the help of the authorities, the man was apprehended and taken into custody. His plan to ruin the holiday had failed, and the people of the city breathed a sigh of relief knowing that they were safe from his evil intentions. Despite the scare, the city continued to celebrate Easter with renewed enthusiasm. The once festive holiday had been interrupted by an attempt to ruin it, but the community rallied together, determined to keep the holiday spirit alive and protect themselves from any future malicious plots.
The churchgoers had never seen the light on in that house before. As they walked past, they heard strange noises coming from inside. It sounded like someone was dragging something heavy across the floor. Curiosity got the better of them, and a few of the churchgoers decided to investigate. They cautiously approached the house, but when they tried to open the front door, it wouldn't budge. They could hear something scratching and clawing at the other side. Suddenly, the front door swung open with a loud creak. The churchgoers were met with a musty smell and complete darkness. They hesitated for a moment before one of them bravely took out their phone and used the flashlight to illuminate the room. What they saw sent chills down their spine. The room was empty except for a small table in the center. On the table lay a single, decorated Easter egg. But it wasn't a normal Easter egg. It was cracked open, and inside was a human eyeball staring back at them. Before they could even scream, they heard a whisper in the darkness. "Happy Easter." The churchgoers turned around and ran as fast as they could back to the church. From that day on, the empty rundown house was never occupied again, and the churchgoers never spoke of what they saw that Easter Sunday. They knew it was something best left forgotten.
It was Easter weekend, and families from all over the town flocked to the local zoo to enjoy the festivities. The highlight of the Easter-themed exhibits was the bunny enclosure, where dozens of fluffy bunnies hopped around happily in their cozy nests. As the day turned to night, the zookeeper noticed something unusual. One of the bunnies had gone missing, and there were strange marks on the ground that looked like claw marks. The zookeeper searched the enclosure, but there was no sign of the bunny. Later that night, the zookeeper heard a low growling sound coming from the bunny exhibit. He cautiously approached the enclosure, only to see a terrifying sight. A huge wolf had somehow entered the enclosure and was now preying on the helpless bunnies. The wolf was unlike any the zookeeper had ever seen. Its fur was a deep, dark shade of black, and its eyes glowed an eerie red. The zookeeper tried to scare the wolf away, but it didn't budge. Instead, it turned to face him, baring its razor-sharp teeth. Suddenly, the lights in the bunny exhibit flickered and went out, plunging the enclosure into darkness. The zookeeper could hear the sound of the wolf's claws scraping against the ground as it approached him. He fumbled for his flashlight, but it wouldn't turn on. Just when he thought he was done for, he heard the sound of church bells ringing in the distance. The wolf let out a bone-chilling howl and ran off into the night. The next day, the zookeeper discovered that all the bunnies in the exhibit had been killed. No one knew where the wolf had come from or how it had entered the enclosure. To this day, some visitors to the zoo swear they can hear the howling of a wolf in the bunny exhibit at night, and they avoid the area at all costs during Easter. It was close to Easter time, and the small town of Springville was bustling with excitement. Everyone was getting ready for the big Easter parade and egg hunt, but something strange was happening. Everywhere people looked, they saw a drawing of an Easter bunny. The drawing was on every lamppost, every storefront window, every billboard, and even every tree. It was a simple drawing, just a sketch in black ink on a white background, but it was everywhere. At first, people didn't think much of it. Maybe it was just a local artist trying to spread some holiday cheer. But as the days went on, the drawings kept appearing. More and more drawings appeared on every wall, floor, and even the roof. And they all looked the same, as if they were all drawn by the same hand. People started to get a little unnerved by it. Who was behind all these drawings, and why were they everywhere? Some even started to have nightmares about the bunny, as if it was watching them with its beady eyes. As Easter drew closer, things only got worse. The drawings started appearing in people's homes, on their mirrors and walls. Some people even reported seeing the bunny in their dreams, whispering dark secrets and urging them to do terrible things. The town council tried to investigate, but they couldn't find any leads. No one seemed to know who was behind the drawings, and they couldn't trace them back to any particular artist or organization. The only thing they knew for sure was that the bunny was spreading fear and unease throughout the town. On Easter morning, the parade started as usual. People dressed in their best pastel clothes, carrying baskets and balloons. But as they rounded the corner, they saw something that made them freeze in terror. The Easter bunny was there, in the flesh. But it wasn't the cute, cuddly bunny they were used to. It was huge, with razor-sharp teeth and glowing red eyes. It lunged at the crowd, slashing and biting with its powerful claws. People ran and screamed, but the bunny was too fast. It seemed to be everywhere at once, attacking anyone who crossed its path. Some tried to fight back, but their efforts were futile against the beast's strength and ferocity. In the end, the bunny disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. The town was left in ruins, with bodies and blood staining the streets. And even though the bunny was gone, the drawings remained, a haunting reminder of the terror that had taken hold of the town. No one knows what happened to the Easter bunny, or who was behind the drawings. Some say it was just a myth, a legend come to life. But others swear that they can still hear the bunny's laughter in the dark, and that they can still see its glowing eyes watching them from the shadows. Once upon a time, there was a criminal group that operated in a small village. This group was notorious for catching rabbits and chaining them up, and then extracting their gallbladder bile for profit. They sold rabbit gallbladder bile on the black market, which people buy to make medicines. The criminal group was cruel and abusive to the rabbits, causing them immense pain and suffering. The group was led by a man named Liam, who was known for his greed and ruthlessness. He had a team of associates who helped him catch the rabbits and extract their bile. They did this by using a variety of cruel and inhumane methods, including trapping them in cages and beating them until they were subdued. The villagers knew about the group's activities but were too afraid to speak up. That is until one day, a group of animal rights activists arrived in the village. They were horrified by what they saw and decided to take action. The activists organized a raid on the criminal group's hideout, and with the help of the local police, they were able to arrest Liam and his associates. The authorities found cages filled with rabbits, all chained up and in terrible condition. The group had been caught red-handed. The villagers were relieved that justice had been served, and the rabbits were freed and given proper medical care. Liam and his associates were charged with animal cruelty and sentenced to prison. The villagers learned a valuable lesson about the importance of speaking up against cruelty and abuse. An interesting fact is that the day of the raid happened to be on an Easter Sunday, which is widely celebrated as Bunny's Day. People are happy to hear that the bunnies got their freedom on Bunny's Day. It was Easter Sunday, and the children of the small town of Pinehaven were excited for the annual Easter egg hunt in the forest. The town had been holding the egg hunt for generations, and it was always a joyous occasion filled with laughter and fun. As the children arrived, they were given baskets and instructions on how to find the hidden Easter eggs. The forest was beautiful, with tall trees and lush greenery. The sun was shining, and the birds were singing, but something felt off. As the children went deeper into the forest, they noticed that the atmosphere had changed. The trees seemed to be closer together, and the sun was no longer shining through the branches. The air was colder, and the birds had stopped singing. Suddenly, the children saw something in the distance. It was a large, wooden statue of a rabbit. It was old and weathered, but its eyes seemed to follow the children as they approached. The children were curious and approached the statue. As they got closer, they noticed that there were Easter eggs scattered around its feet. Excitedly, the children reached out to grab the eggs, but as soon as they touched them, they heard a strange whispering. The whispering grew louder, and the children realized that it was coming from the statue. The rabbit's eyes began to glow red, and its mouth opened wide, revealing sharp teeth. The children screamed in terror and tried to run away, but the rabbit's vines had wrapped around their feet, holding them in place. The children looked up and saw that the trees had moved, blocking their escape. They were trapped, and the rabbit was getting closer and closer. Its mouth opened wider and wider until it was almost the size of the children's heads. Just as the rabbit was about to consume them, the children woke up, realizing that it was all just a nightmare. But as they got ready for the egg hunt, they noticed that the wooden rabbit statue was missing from the town square. No one knew where it had gone, but they all had a feeling that it was waiting for them in the forest, ready to make their worst nightmare a reality. The group of friends, Alex, Sarah, Mark, and Emily, were excited to watch a horror movie on Easter Sunday. As the movie progressed, they felt their spines chilling with each scene. Suddenly, the theater turned cold, and they could see their breaths misting in the air. They looked around and realized that everyone else had disappeared, leaving them alone in the theater. Panic started to set in as they tried to open the doors, but they were locked from the outside. They were trapped, and they didn't know why. Then, out of nowhere, an Easter egg rolled in front of them, its bright colors standing out in the dark theater. As they picked up the egg, they noticed that it was unlike any other Easter egg they had seen before. The colors were vibrant, almost glowing, and the patterns on it were intricate and strange. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the group heard a voice whispering in their ears. They couldn't make out what it was saying, but they felt its presence around them. Then, one by one, they started to see visions of their worst nightmares. Alex saw himself being chased by a faceless figure, Sarah saw her dead grandmother, Mark saw his parents being murdered, and Emily saw herself drowning. They screamed and cried, but the visions didn't stop. They were trapped in their own fears, and they didn't know how to escape. As the visions intensified, they felt like they were losing their grip on reality. Then, as suddenly as it started, the visions stopped, and the theater doors opened. They stumbled out, shaken and scared, into the bright Easter sunlight. As they looked back at the theater, they saw the Easter egg on the ground, cracked open and empty. The mystery of what happened that day still haunts them to this day. On a cold Easter morning, a group of hikers set out to climb a mountain that had been closed off during the winter months. The weather report had predicted clear skies, but as the group made their way up the mountain, they encountered a heavy snowstorm that quickly disoriented them. One hiker, named Emily, got separated from the group and found herself lost and alone in the snow-covered wilderness. As the night fell, Emily was still wandering around trying to find a way back to the trail when she heard a strange noise in the distance. It was a sound that she had never heard before, a mix of howling and snorting. As she followed the noise, she came across a large creature with rabbit ears standing in front of her. It was Bigfoot, but with the features of a rabbit. Emily was terrified and frozen with fear. She knew she had to run, but her feet felt heavy and sluggish in the snow. Bigfoot hopped closer and closer, and Emily was sure that she was going to be its next meal. Suddenly, she remembered that it was Easter, and she had a chocolate Easter bunny in her backpack. She took it out and offered it to the creature. To her surprise, Bigfoot took the chocolate bunny and hopped away, disappearing into the snowy wilderness. Emily was confused but relieved that she was safe. She eventually found her way back to the trail and was reunited with the rest of the hikers. From that day on, Emily never forgot the strange encounter she had with the bunny-eared Bigfoot on that snowy Easter night. She always kept a chocolate bunny in her backpack, just in case she ever ran into the creature again. It was Easter morning, and two high schoolers, Simon and Lily, decided to participate in the annual Easter egg hunt at their local park. The event was always a hit among the kids in their small town, and Simon and Lily were eager to join in on the fun. The Easter egg hunt was going well, and Simon and Lily were having a great time searching for colorful eggs hidden throughout the park. As they were running around, Simon noticed a strange hole in the ground. It was covered by some bushes, and he could barely make out what was inside. "Hey, Lily, come check this out," Simon called out to his friend. Lily walked over, and together they tried to peek into the hole. Suddenly, they both lost their balance and fell in, tumbling down into the darkness. When they finally landed, they realized they were in a strange, new world. The sky was a strange shade of purple, and the trees looked like they were made of candy. But what really caught their attention were the rabbits. There were dozens of them, hopping around with sharp teeth and even sharper claws. At first, Simon and Lily were amazed by the creatures, but then they realized how dangerous they were. The rabbits seemed to be sizing them up, looking at them like they were prey. "We need to find a way out of here," Lily said, her voice trembling with fear. The two friends started walking, trying to find any sign of civilization or a way out of this strange world. As they walked, they could hear the sound of the rabbits following them, their claws clicking against the candy-like ground. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise, and as they turned around, they saw a group of rabbits, led by a giant rabbit with glowing red eyes, closing in on them. They were trapped. Just when they thought it was the end, a voice called out from behind them. It was a kind, old man with a long white beard, holding a basket filled with Easter eggs. "Quick, grab an egg and throw it at the rabbits," the old man instructed. Simon and Lily did as they were told, and to their surprise, the rabbits scattered as the eggs exploded, leaving behind a trail of colorful dust. The old man led Simon and Lily to safety, telling them that they had fallen into a portal to a world ruled by a cruel Easter bunny. He explained that the only way to defeat the bunny and his minions was to use the power of Easter eggs, which contained magic that could weaken their enemy. Together, they went on a quest to gather as many eggs as they could, with Simon and Lily learning to fight alongside the old man. In the end, they were able to defeat the evil Easter bunny, and the portal back to their world was opened. Simon and Lily returned to their own world, grateful for the adventure, but also grateful to be home. 2 years later, though, Simon and Lily received a mysterious letter with no return address. As they read the letter, their hearts sank with shock and sadness. The letter revealed that the giant evil rabbit had somehow been revived and was once again ruling the other world with an iron fist. Even worse, they learned that the old man, their wise and kind guide, had been killed in his sleep by the malevolent creature. Simon and Lily vowed to return to the other world one day and fight the evil rabbit again, and to avenge the murder of their dear friend.